Hey, I'm going to try to not make this one too long because it's late. I want to make a few words on the Chinese state visit to the United Kingdom, which is underway right now. Xi Jinping and the First Lady Peng Liyuan are staying in London. I believe it's at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. This has been quite widely discussed. I believe it's the first state visit in about 10 years. Li Keqiang visited a while back, but that wasn't classed as a full state visit because obviously he's not head of state in the same way. Actually, it may have been Wen Jiabao, can't remember exactly, but whatever the case, this is a high-level delegation. Um, it's about 2 years, I believe, since David Cameron was in China. Um, I've got very mixed opinions about this, and it comes from my mixed feelings about China in general. As a country, I am very fond of China, and I feel a strong connection to that country in terms of its culture, its people, and a lot of other aspects. That that's the truth. I do. Um, but I've never been a fan of communism, and I've made no secret of that fact. Um, I'll never ever be comfortable with a single party that has absolute control in the media and lies about its own past. Simple fact. Now, I'm not going to go into too many details in this video because, like I say, the state visit is still underway. Few observations. Prince William used the event along with people like Yao Ming to raise awareness of the ivory trade. That's a good thing. That's something that is to be welcomed because there is a big problem with Chinese consumers buying ivory, hence pushing up the demand for it, which is leading to lots of these animals being killed. Um, Now, to be fair, Chinese celebrities have played an important role in trying to spread public awareness along with Prince William and others. Um, that's good. Um, Chinese state media has been very keen to talk about a golden era between Britain and China. Media outlets like Xinhua, China Daily have been very lavish in their praising of this cooperation. David Cameron and George Osborne, for their part, have went out of their way to try and make Britain China's number one Western partner. Um, there is some geopolitical facts to consider. We have much, much less of an influence in the Pacific region than the United States does. But I think it's fair to say we've almost no influence. Therefore, in a sense, we're a safe pair of hands. We've no real contention. We have good relations with Japan, South Korea, and most of the countries in the region, but we're not really involved in the same way the United States is. So I think the Chinese, from their perspective, see us as, in that sense, a safe pair of hands. Um, there is a Hong Kong dispute, of course, and there's a wide range of other issues, not least human rights. Um, but there's a specific thing I want to talk about, and this is something that I have to say makes me very uncomfortable. Um, According to the BBC report, um, the Chinese embassy had encouraged local Chinese to come out and wave flags and cheer Xi as he arrived. Now, on the surface, that sounds innocent enough. Well, he's he's their head of state. They're greeting him. What's the big deal? Um, and if it was just that, there wouldn't really be a problem. But Chinese state media has just blatantly refused to broadcast the counter situation, which was the protesters. There were Chinese dissidents, Tibet protesters, you name it, also protesting. Um, Now, I'm not saying here I agree with all their positions because I don't, not all of their positions, but I certainly would agree with a lot of the concerns, especially on human rights. Um, and I think it says a lot that Chinese state media won't bother to broadcast that. I also think that we need to look at this situation in reverse. Imagine a situation where the British Embassy in Beijing encouraged Britain's lair, i.e., English teachers, business people, and so on, to come out and cheer David Cameron. Well, I'll tell you what the response would be. Back here, it would be ridiculed, and in China, I am pretty sure there would be a pretty hostile reaction, because China is still it's an open country, but it's still not as nowhere near as multicultural as Western countries. And inevitably you would have nationalists harping on about the Opium Wars. I have to say, it kind of pisses me off when nationalists go on about the Opium Wars, simply because I think it's hypocritical. It was such a long time ago, and the worst events in Chinese history, modern history, have happened under the Communist Party, outside Japanese wartime atrocities. But Mao's regime killed countless millions of people. The Communist Party still shamefully covers that over. Now, the point I'm making here is that when I see online netizens go on and on about the Opium Wars, I'm thinking, well, wait a second, where's your outrage over the Cultural Revolution and the millions of Mao killed? So I do think China, you know, it's difficult because I want to express how I'm feeling without coming across like I'm anti-China, because I'm really not. Look, I've got, you don't believe me, I'm a Chinese flag. So clearly, I wouldn't hate China if I had the Chinese flag. I think that proves it. But I make no apology for my views on communist hypocrisy. It's just like that World War II display recently. When Xi and Li were preaching about countries opening up about the past, when that's the very thing they don't do. Um, So I do feel quite uneasy about encouraging nationalism in other countries, which is essentially what this amounts to. Of course, it's done in a very polite way, and people wave little British flags along with the Chinese flags. But personally, I think that's an insult to our sovereignty. Um, if they genuinely want to do it of their own accord, fair enough. But for the embassy to encourage them to do that, to me, that's questionable. Um, but this is consistent with the way the Communist Party operates. They have a very large contingent of people online who whose entire online activity is dedicated to spreading communist propaganda. One example of this is someone who calls himself Shanghai Noon. Now, I've seen this guy or girl um, on and off for a number of years. He or she is on every single video related to the subject, and every single video that he or she comments on is criticism of the West, praise of China, and their user picture is a Chinese flag. Now, this is the sort of person that I'm talking about. They're employed by the Communist Party to spread communist propaganda. Um, they have zero objectivity. They'll never criticize the party, and I think it's pathetic. Um, I also think it's hypocritical because YouTube is banned in China, so they use a website that is banned in order to defend the party. Sometimes I do think the West shows weakness to China. I do think sometimes we need to be more assertive. I think, for example, Mark Zuckerberg should have taken that opportunity to push Xi Jinping on the spot. He could do it politely. Mr. Xi, why do you ban my website in your country? Um, for me, I think, there's always talk about this golden era. I would love to say it was. I would love to say, oh, it's wonderful. We have peace, great relations between two countries. you know, the diplomatic side of me thinks that's a good thing, and the pro-China side of me thinks, yeah, it would be great to be close to China, but my conscience dictates that we're dealing with a party that is fundamentally extremely dishonest about its past, continues to persecute dissidents, and continues to promote nationalism abroad. These are all very questionable areas. Now, of course, Xi is a clever man. He's polite, he's diplomatic, he knows how to communicate. But I'm very wary of the whole thing, and I think we need to tread very, very carefully. As I've said in the previous video on this subject, it would be wrong to completely say, okay, we're going to have no relations with China. That would be crazy. It wouldn't be practical from our point of view. It wouldn't be diplomatic. It would be crazy. But we have to tread very carefully because despite what Cameron and Osborne say, the way it's coming across to a lot of British people right now is that we're kowtowing. We're just doing what Beijing is asking us to do. And this is coming across as one-sided. Um, I haven't mentioned the steel issue. There's been 15,000 steel job losses. The reason being, I don't know enough about that issue. That's the candid truth. I don't know enough about the issue to comment. That's why I haven't mentioned it. But my concern is the promotion of nationalism. Of all the issues, that's the one that bugs me the most because Beijing is very keen to preach about, oh, you know, about internal affairs and about other countries minding their own business, this sort of thing. And yet Beijing is very determined to promote nationalism overseas. So if they want to be, if they don't want foreigners to interfere in Chinese affairs, they should show a bit more humility abroad. And I do think in recent years they've demonstrated incredible arrogance, incredible arrogance. Um, and the talk of Chinese peaceful rise. It's true that China hasn't been involved in armed conflict in recent years. That's true, but it's arrogance in other ways. Before anyone comes on this video and says, "Oh, America this, America that," I'm not interested in defending America. I'm not even interested in defending Britain because there's many areas I think we are wrong. We're wrong to be so close to Saudi Arabia. I'm objective. I can be critical of my own country, but I absolutely stand by my right to observe these situations. To be fair to Jeremy Corbyn, and it is another side I've seen to Mr. Corbyn, it has been widely reported that he is going to bring up the human rights issue. I suspect that he'll be very diplomatic about it, but if he does that, in my opinion, that deserves a lot of respect. Now, she can say it's none of our business, but I've made this um, observation. If you're doing a deal with someone, you have a right to know the background. If you do a business deal as an individual, you'd want to know a bit about the person that you're doing a deal with. It seems valid to me that we do have some interest in China's internal affairs. It's not about sovereignty. We can fully respect Chinese sovereignty. This is not the 1840s. So analogies with the Opium Wars are phony. Um, but China has to accept it's a member of the international community, and there is actually international binding laws on issues like human rights and against, for example, the use of torture. So for me, this leaves me somewhere between a rock and a hard place because I'm someone who, I'm not one of these people who hate China or something like that. Certainly not. But there is a lot of areas that makes me uncomfortable. The promotion of nationalism, especially in other countries, I think that's incredibly arrogant. Now you can say the British used to behave like that, and it's true, we did. But we have a saying in English: two wrongs don't make a right. So just because we once done it doesn't mean it's okay for China to behave that way now. If anything, China should be learning from British mistakes, such as that sort of arrogance, instead of replicating it. Not much else to say really, but I'm not being entirely negative here. I'm sure, in the whole spectrum of analysis, there'll be some good things to come out of this. And of course, it's better to have good relations than bad relations. But I don't want good relations to be at the price of this country selling its soul. Now, it could be argued we've already done that with our closeness to Saudi Arabia, which is far worse than China when it comes to human rights. Far worse. Um, I mean, I'd much rather be a woman in China than in Saudi Arabia, put it that way. But my point is, we have to have a set of values. And I do think Jeremy Corbyn has demonstrated more strength in this area than Cameron has. And I'm not a Jeremy Corbyn supporter, but it's getting a fine line between having good relations, being diplomatic, welcoming your host, welcoming your guests, but not selling your soul. And frankly, this is coming across as one-sided.